Welcome back to Racing Rundown here on YouTube. I'm Eric DeCoster. In this Kentucky Derby profile, we'll be taking a look at Zozos, a very lightly raced but talented colt of Brad Cox's, one of three he'll have in this year's Kentucky Derby. Very quick ascent for this colt from a late January maiden win all the way to his Louisiana Derby runner-up. We'll watch all three of his career races. This is his debut maiden victory on January 23rd, race 9. Pretty well regarded coming into here. He went off at 2-1, not favored, but low enough on the odds board. I remember being pretty high on him in this spot. He made me some good money in multi-race wagers, so that's a positive in his corner in my eyes for sure. But you see him sitting a good mid-pack trip at the moment. He's going to range up wider on the course and run down these horses late. It doesn't tell you too much on the Derby, but it did show talent, and I think that's the biggest thing. It takes a lot for a horse to come from off the pace on debut. A bunch of these horses already had good experience, so for him to take them down and topple them shows signs of talent that we'll of course see over his other two starts from this year. Right now, he's just battling with a horse on the inside named Stated for Half. He's 20-1 here, but he's pretty decently bred. That long shot of Steve Asmussen's there, who went and bumped into the rail. But point is that there were some good horses in this race. Who a few of them came back to win their next races or run well in their very next start. So that's a positive as well. A horse that not only possessed a lot of talent first out in Zozos, but also beat horses with experience and talent themselves. So from that big win at Fairgrounds, Brad Cox shipped him up to Oaklawn Park looking for a nice little non-winners at two allowance to tackle with Zozos, ideally going to turns two, potentially throw him in a Kentucky Derby prep. He's the 9 horse, same silks as that last race, and he'll go up and press the pace. I do want to mention in that last race, he did put up a 70 buyer, pretty low on other metrics as well. So the speed figures weren't there, and he went off close to 4-1 in this spot. You can see right there, 7-2. He's really closer to 4-1. But the favorite in here is Barossa, graded stakes competitor for Bob Baffert at one point, and he's setting the pace. You'll see the fractions; they don't really go that quick, which obviously is going to aid Zozos. Given his positioning, I was a little skeptical. I didn't know if he wanted to go the 2 turns, but right now he's traveling well within himself. This is a big field. Handful of these horses have, or since have this race, gone on to compete in stakes company. Maybe not well, but they did it. They tried it. So it's not like this was the weakest group of runners ever, albeit not Kentucky Derby level. The half just flashed. They're close to 49 flat at this point. Zozo's still traveling well within himself, and of course those slow times that Barros is putting up right in front of him are going to aid him exponentially. But this is where things get really impressive for Zozos, and it's really where you're like, okay, we might be dealing with a serious runner. He's going to draw even with the very experienced and talented Barossa to his inside, and as they come into the stretch, you'll see him blow him out of the water. This is very strong, and from this big win that you're about to see, Brad Cox says, okay, we're going to give him one shot to make the Kentucky Derby, which was the Louisiana Derby, which we'll watch, of course, in 1 second. But all in all, just love it. Florent Geroux getting busy here. This is the first time Florent Geroux rode him. He is driving away, and the most impressive thing I think is once he puts the whip away, the horse just keeps rolling. I mean, he did not need much encouragement. He did it all on his own, put up some very nice figures in this spot, and yes, led into the Louisiana Derby, where he went off at about 5-2 and was well regarded there. So as we saw in his first 2 races, really, he was not on the lead. He took back in that sprinting maiden win. Last time out, he was pressing the pace. Here, though, Florent Geroux does get a little busy and does ask him to go out and take the lead. And actually, a bit surprising given the eventual winner here in the favorite in this race, Epicenter, the 6 horse in the white cap, right behind Zozos, was expected to go be the pace setter. So he took advantage here, going at a not a very quick clip. I thought it was a pretty not slow. Slow is the wrong word to use. On the slower side is a better way to put it. Fractions wise, he's being pressed by Pioneer Medina, but as you can see, they're not asking him to do much, and he's coasting around here. Another big question was, this is a horse who just 2 starts ago was going 6 furlongs, comes from a very, very big sprinter pedigree. And how is he going to handle this mile and 3/16 distance? The Louisiana Derby the last few years has gone 9.5 furlongs, which is very pivotal. We saw last year horses like Mandaloon and Hot Rod Charlie and even Obesos, who was 4th, all run in the Louisiana Derby going a mile and 3/16, and then translate that to a big 1.25 mile effort at Churchill Downs on the first Saturday in May. Don't know if it'll play out the same this year, but that's what Zozos was tackling. Going that long distance, huge hikes in how far he had to go, and big questions around it. But right now, He's going slow, carving out some fractions that just get slower and slower internally with every single quarter. And as of now, Florent Giroux really has not gotten busy on him. Pioneer Medina was coming off a pretty decent effort in the Risen Star. Right behind him is Epicenter, who won that Risen Star. And further back, you have the Lecomte winner, a Grade 1 winner in Rattle and Roll. You have Capuna, who was second to Cyberknife in an allowance. Galt, who was fourth in the Holy Bull. There's a lot of good horses in this race on paper heading into it, at least. And Zozos, you see him battling. He was unable to put away Epicenter, but he is digging in as hard as he can. Does kind of come back here. I know Joel Rosario kind of let Epicenter coast to the wire late, but Zozos was re-rallying on him a bit, only beaten about 2.5 lengths under the line, and showed some good potential. And there you see a pretty solid gallop out as well, all things considered. This was a very, very strong effort from Zozos, given a lot of factors were played against him heading into this race, and he handled it all with a lot of good effort. So obviously a very lightly raced horse in Zozos. 3 races in total, but the progression has been impressive, and he's ran 3 good races every single time he's hit the track. We'll talk about who's going to ride Zozos in the Kentucky Derby, because as of now, when I'm recording this, we do not know, because trainer Brad Cox, who with his first 2 Derby starters last year ran first and third, and he brings in 3 more this year. They'll all probably be mild prices at least, Zozos included, but at the same time, they're all coming off of excellent prep races. But for Zozos specifically, three buyers obviously for 3 races, but the improvement is extremely evident. The debut wasn't incredible. I mean, it was a good win, but they didn't look like they were finishing up too well. Zozos might not even have won that race if the horse inside of him didn't drift towards the rail late, but nevertheless got the job done. But the ascension to a 22-point gain in the allowance win and then 6 more in the Louisiana Derby, a 98 is nothing to slouch at for that final prep race, win or lose. I mean, that puts him up there. That's only 4 points off of Tabo's win, which is the highest last out prep buyer, which he sported in the Santa Anita Derby. So you had to really like Zozos from a numbers perspective, given what he's done in his last 2 races and that exponential growth he showed from start number 1. Jockey wise, Brad Cox is kind of in sit and wait moment right now. If you're watching, he might have already listed a rider, which is great, but as I'm recording, and it seems like Brad Cox, he's just kind of sitting and seeing if someone will drop, and if they do drop, what rider will go. Let's say it is perhaps one of the favorites. You're going to be gaining a very experienced, talented rider who may have won a Kentucky Derby, and they're going to be scrounging around for a Kentucky Derby mount. That's when you'll throw them on. But let's say that doesn't happen. Colby Hernandez, very talented rider down in Louisiana and in Kentucky as well. He broke Zozos' maiden. I wouldn't be surprised if none of those defections do come and he picks up the ride. A couple of other options. Marcelino Pedroza is kind of Brad Cox's first call rider at Horseshoe Indianapolis, I should say, not Indiana Grand. So that could be an option as well. Pedroza was 4th in the Kentucky Derby last year on O Bezos. And then Ricardo Santana Jr., he's been riding a fair amount for Brad Cox at Oaklawn as well. He does not have a Derby mount lined up at the moment. So those are potential options. There's a handful of horses who don't have riders yet. Brad Cox has 2 of those, and a lot of the top level riders and the veterans as well, all currently snatched up. So it'll certainly be interesting to see where that goes. But let's take a look at these pros quick. Zozos, he outruns his pedigree. He is not really a 2-turn horse on paper, being by Munnings out of a forestry mare. That's just speed, speed, speed through and through. 1-turn miles is the furthest I think he'd want to go, but the fact that he was able to go a mile and 3/16 so impressively and finish out as nicely as he did, in addition to that 2-turn victory in start number 2, that's big. That's really big in my eyes. I think that tells you a lot. That's not really what I'm worried about here heading into the Derby, is his pedigree. His victories have been flashy. His maiden win was good enough given how he did it. The allowance win, 1 by 10, and he really extended when he wasn't asked. That's really the most impressive part to me. He got better when Florent Giroux put the whip away, which is not something you can say much for a good horse. And I think a big thing is he lost to the Derby favorite. Sure, he ran second last time out, but the horse that beat him is the most highly regarded horse in this year's Kentucky Derby, and he didn't lose too disgracefully to him. He was only beaten 2.5 lengths. Coming back at him, was he ever going to win the race? No, but he dueled, and obviously, if you're looking at things maybe underneath, you'd say, well, if Epicenter is going to win this again, if you think that at least, then why not use a horse in some facet to finish something out or include him somewhere that was a close second to him in his most recent start. The cons, it was kind of a merry-go-round in the Louisiana Derby. I know Epicenter came from that stalking position, but the pace held up pretty sharply with Zozos running second, Pioneer of Medina running third. So that didn't tell me a lot. I thought that that top three kind of dominated from the outset, went slow enough to where it would be beneficial to them. And then I think even more so that second win, sure he did win by 10, but they went so slow in the early goings of the race that it really played into his hands. If they did go a lot quicker, then what would have been the result for Zozos? He's really had three very favorable trips in all three career starts. He also has never finished first in a graded stakes quality race. His maiden win, I know I said there were next out winners, but graded stakes quality, probably not. Same can be said for that allowance last time out. There 2 starts ago. Obviously, I mentioned he beat some good horses in the Louisiana Derby, or at least finished in front of them, but they've all kind of fallen off form. I mean, Rattle and Roll came back to run. He didn't run well on the bluegrass. A couple others in there. They were all trying to get to the Derby. Call Me Midnight. He lost the Lexington as well, right? So the form from that race really has not been all that exceptional. That's a negative in my eyes for sure. And then another con. I don't know the kind of trip he'll sit, but I think it's going to be really intriguing. We saw him go to the lead in the Louisiana Derby. He was kind of de facto on the lead, pressing more so in that allowance win. And then he came from off the pace sprinting, but usually when a sprinter gets out to 2 turns, they show a lot of speed, and that was pretty evident in the Louisiana Derby. I'm curious to see how he'll be ridden in the Kentucky Derby because I'm not sure. Obviously, he wants to be forwardly placed. He will not be on the lead. I think there's a couple more horses in there that just have more natural early speed, but he'd be in the clear second or third, much like he was in the Oaklawn allowance win. However, let's say he does break and he's not ridden aggressively to the front. All of a sudden, you're going to have a bunch of horses that do have that speed, that want to probably sit a really close stalking second flight trip, and he's going to find himself back 12th. So I think it's going to be tricky in terms of the trip Zozos might get, because I think if he does go to the lead, he might work too hard, go too fast, and burn out. But at the same time, if he avoids that, if he doesn't get aggressive, he might get too conservative and then find himself back in 12th behind all these stalkers that want to be more forward than him. And if he does find himself around the stalkers, he's never really had to deal with being in a pack of horses, and that would be a first too, because there's going to be a lot of stalking, pressing types in the Kentucky Derby this year. And no matter what, they're going to have to know how to deal with other horses around them. Maybe being between them, maybe being wide, maybe being inside of all those runners. That is truly something he's never had to deal with. He has tripped out in 3 consecutive races. And the Kentucky Derby, it is near impossible to get the perfect trip. And that's obviously going to be huge, especially if you handicap based off of trip or pace. So I think Zozos has a lot of talent. I just worry how much his inexperience is going to get in the way of him. But if he can establish himself forward in the early stages of the Derby and the pace does end up being on the slower side, very favorable to him, like it has been in those last 2 races, he could definitely dig in, fight on well throughout the stretch and be there. I do also want, maybe it is a bit too far. Was he able to go slow enough in the Louisiana Derby where he was able to outrun the Pedigree? If he does go too quick, will a mile and a quarter get to him? It's just tough to say. It's really tough to say. It would definitely be not a stretch would definitely be the wrong word to use. It's not a stretch to pick him because he does have a lot of good qualities, but it would definitely be far more risky, and the odds will reflect this 100%, but it'll be far more risky to go with Zozos given there's plenty of factors that are also playing against him. But I think he's a good horse no matter what. It might be too much too soon, but at the same time, he might flourish. And no matter what, I think he's in for a very good long career as long as he stays healthy. So that's all I have for you guys on this Kentucky Derby preview. A horse that has the talent, but has to live up to it in a short amount of time. And don't really know if that's possible, but he's good no matter what. And that's really the story of Zozos. We'll see you next time here on Racing Rundown.